Tier 1. The silence before the words. I never thought I'd write a letter to myself. Not really. I've written grocery lists, post-it notes, birthday cards, and the occasional diary entry. But a letter, one that truly felt like it came from the heart to myself, that always felt unnecessary. Or maybe too exposing. Because there's something unsettling about facing your own eyes across a piece of paper. Like standing in front of a mirror in the dark, unsure of what reflection you'll meet. For years, I've carried around words. Unspoken ones. Heavy ones. Ones I didn't know where to place. And slowly, they settled in the quietest parts of me. I don't know when the silence began. Maybe it wasn't a moment. Maybe it was a slow accumulation like dust on a bookshelf. A pause after a loss. A breath held too long. A truth too tender to speak out loud. Sometimes, I'd catch myself thinking, if only someone understood. But then I'd realize, maybe the person I wanted understanding from was me. Not the me that smiles at the right times. Not the me who gets things done. But the softer, quieter version. The one I tuck away when the world gets loud. That version of me, she's the one this letter was meant for. The one who needed to be seen. To be heard. To be told. You're not invisible. You're not forgotten. I still see you. There were nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling like a stranger to myself. Not sad exactly, just distant. Like I had drifted from my own shores, anchored in someone else's expectations. It's strange how we can lose touch with ourselves while still going through the motions of living. Wake up. Show up. Smile. Repeat. But inside, a quiet voice whispers, "Are you okay?" And most days, I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how. Because the truth is, no one teaches you how to talk to yourself kindly. We're taught how to apologize to others, but not to forgive our own regrets. We're taught how to encourage friends, but not how to cheer ourselves on when we falter. And somewhere along the way, I forgot that I, too, deserved to be spoken to with softness. So, here I am, finally sitting down, pen in hand, not to perform, not to impress, but to whisper back to the version of me who waited so patiently in the silence. And it begins with something simple, something small, but long overdue. Hey, I see you. I remember a time years ago when I stood by the kitchen sink, hands wet, staring out the window. I don't even remember what I was thinking about, but I remember the feeling. That deep, hollow ache of being surrounded by noise but feeling completely alone. The radio was on. Dishes clinked. A car passed outside. But inside me, there was a stillness. Not peace, but pause. And I think, even back then, a part of me hoped someone would reach in. Say something. Notice. But no one ever does. Not when you hide it well. And I was good at hiding. Smiling through the heaviness. Saying I'm fine in 10 different tones. There's something about that silence, the kind we wear like a second skin, that convinces us we're too much to hold, or not enough to matter. But neither is true. And maybe that's why this letter matters. Not for its eloquence, not for its clarity, but for its existence. Because putting pen to paper is a declaration. I am still here. I still feel. I still believe there's something worth writing down. Even if the words come slow. Even if the page remains half empty. Even if no one else ever reads it. Writing to myself is how I begin again. There's no plot twist in this story. No grand revelation. Just a soft return. A slow walk back toward myself. And maybe, just maybe, you've needed that too. A reminder that even when no one else understands, even when the world rushes past, even when you've gone quiet inside, there's still a voice within you that deserves to be heard. Even if it trembles, even if it's just a whisper. And so, this letter doesn't begin with "Dear Me." It begins with the silence. And what I choose to say next is what we'll write together. Tier 2. What I needed to hear. There's a sentence I've whispered to others 100 times. It's okay. You did your best. I've offered it like a balm. A soft place to land. To friends in pain. To strangers crying in public bathrooms. To children who thought mistakes made them unlovable. But somehow, I never said it to myself. Maybe I thought I didn't deserve it. Maybe I believed that if I forgave myself too easily, I wouldn't grow. Or maybe I just never knew how much I needed to hear it. So let me say it now. It's okay. You did your best. Even when your best was messy. Even when your best meant staying quiet instead of speaking up. Even when your best was just getting through the day. I see now that I've spent so long trying to earn my own kindness. As if compassion was a prize and not a right. But healing doesn't wait for permission. It shows up the moment we stop hiding. And tonight, I want to let it in. I remember one night I was sitting on the floor of my closet. Not crying. Not angry. Just empty. I'd come home from work, dropped my bag, and walked straight to the quietest space in the house. Somewhere I could breathe without being observed. And I sat there, in silence, surrounded by shoes and sweaters, holding nothing but exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that isn't cured by sleep, but by softness, by someone saying, "You don't have to be everything today." I wish I had said that to myself then, but I didn't. I just sat, still, afraid to be seen, even by me. There's a version of myself I admire, the one who keeps promises, follows through, remembers birthdays, responds to texts. The version with neat handwriting and consistent habits. But that's not who's reading this letter. That's not who needs these words. This letter is for the version of me who forgets appointments, eats cereal for dinner, and zones out in the middle of conversations. The version who feels too much and says too little. The version who doubts, who aches, who hides. And she She is worthy of love, too. Maybe more so. Because loving someone in their mess is where real tenderness lives. And I'm learning, slowly, that I can be that tender with myself. There are so many things I wish someone had told me. You don't have to prove your worth. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. You don't have to fix everything to be enough. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a story still being told. I think if someone had said that to me and meant it, I would have cried. Not out of sadness, but out of relief. Because there's a quiet ache that comes from holding in all the apologies we never gave ourselves. Tonight, I let go of one. To the version of me who stayed silent in the face of pain, I forgive you. You didn't know how to speak yet. To the version who pushed people away when all you wanted was to be held, I understand. You were trying to protect yourself. To the version who broke down in front of the mirror and called it weakness, I see you. That was courage in disguise. To the version who doubted she'd ever feel whole again, you were already whole. You just forgot where to look. Sometimes healing isn't loud. It doesn't come with fanfare or applause. It doesn't look like epiphanies or breakthroughs. Sometimes, healing is sitting quietly with your own story. Not judging it, not editing it, just holding it. Like a letter you were always meant to open. And maybe, for the first time, you read the words and think, this is kinder than I expected. Before tonight, I didn't know how to be gentle with myself. But now, I'm learning that softness isn't weakness. It's the language of healing. And it begins with 5 small words. Words I will try to remember when the world feels too heavy. I'm proud of you anyway. No qualifiers. No achievements required. Just pride. Because you stayed. Because you kept going. Because you dared to pick up the pen and write to the most forgotten version of yourself. And that is something worth whispering into the quiet. Tier 3. The mirror I avoided. There's a mirror in my hallway I used to glance at without ever truly looking. You know the kind, the one you pass on the way to somewhere else. It's tall, framed in chipped white wood, and it stands across from the window where the light pours in soft and golden at dusk. For years, I avoided it. Not because I didn't like how I looked, but because I didn't want to see myself. The real me. The one with tired eyes and slouched shoulders. The one holding invisible weight. The one who whispered apologies in her head all day, but never once said them out loud to herself. There were days I rushed past it late for work, or lost in thought, or simply unwilling to pause. And then there were nights quiet, lingering nights where I'd stand there in the dark hallway, one foot still in the past, the other aching to step forward, staring not at my reflection, but through it, searching for a version of myself I could forgive. But forgiveness is a stubborn guest. It doesn't arrive when summoned. It comes softly. After the shame has sat too long. After the silence has gone brittle. After you've stopped trying to be someone else. It comes when you finally stay. I remember one night in particular. I was brushing my teeth. Nothing poetic, just the quiet monotony of routine. But for some reason, I looked up, really looked. And there I was, mascara smudged, hair undone, not posed, not prepared, just human. And in that moment, something in me cracked, not in pain, but in recognition. It was like meeting a friend I hadn't seen in years. The kind of friend who's been through storms and still shows up with a crooked smile. I didn't look away. For the first time in a long while, I stayed. And do you know what I saw? Not failure, not inadequacy, not weakness. I saw a woman who had loved and lost, who had held too much without complaint, who had kept going, even when no one was watching. I saw all the nights she stayed up worrying, all the mornings she got up anyway, all the times she showed up for others, without once being asked how she was doing. I saw her, and I softened. There is a grief that comes with growth, a kind of mourning for the person you used to be. But there is also beauty, because you begin to see that the version of you in the mirror isn't broken. She's layered. She's lived. She's learning. And when you stop avoiding her, you begin to understand her. I started leaving small notes for myself on the mirror. Little post-its with words I wished someone had told me. You're doing okay. You're allowed to rest. You don't have to carry it all. At first, I wrote them like I was writing to a stranger. But slowly, they began to feel like mine. Some days, I'd write longer letters, rambling thoughts, half-finished confessions, pieces of truth I hadn't said out loud. And sometimes, I'd just breathe in front of that mirror, letting my reflection see the real me. I think we all have a mirror we avoid. It might not be on a wall. It might be a memory, a journal, a voicemail we never listened to, a photograph tucked away. We avoid them because they remind us of who we were before the bruises, before the burnout, before the masks. But the truth is, those mirrors don't judge us. They reflect us, even when we can't bear to look. And sometimes, just sometimes, we catch a glimpse of who we're becoming. I'm not afraid of mirrors anymore. They don't define me. They just witness me. And I've learned that being witnessed fully, softly, without expectation, is a kind of love we rarely offer ourselves. So tonight, before sleep takes you, before the world slips away, I hope you look at yourself, not to assess, not to fix, but just to say I see you. You're still here, and that matters. Tier 4. The apologies I never wrote. There are apologies that echo inside me, ones I've never said aloud. Not to the people I've hurt, but to the version of me that got hurt along the way. I used to think apologies were only for others. You say I'm sorry. You mend. You move on. But what about the silent bruises we leave on ourselves? What about the nights I told myself I wasn't enough? The mornings I looked in the mirror and winced. The days I compared, diminished, dismissed. All the soft, messy, imperfect beauty that was already there. No one else heard those words, but I did, and I carried them like stones. I never wrote these apologies because I didn't know I deserved them. It felt indulgent, self-centered even. But there came a moment on a quiet, rainy afternoon, tea cooling beside me, a pen in my hand and no audience but the page where my heart whispered, "Say it," to her, to the you who kept going. And so I wrote the first one. I'm sorry for calling you weak when all you did was feel. I stared at that sentence for a long time. It trembled there, ink smudging slightly beneath my thumb, but I didn't erase it. I wrote more. I'm sorry for rushing you when you needed rest. I'm sorry for blaming you when things went wrong even when they weren't your fault. I'm sorry for the silence I forced on you, because I was too afraid to listen. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't tidy. Some of the lines made no sense to anyone but me. But it didn't matter, because each word felt like a release, a loosening of the tight knots I'd held beneath my ribs. I thought of the younger version of myself, the one who always said yes, who stayed quiet to avoid conflict, who thought love meant pleasing, and that boundaries were selfish. I used to roll my eyes at her in hindsight, but now, I just want to hug her and tell her I'm sorry for not protecting you. I see now. You were never the problem. You were surviving the only way you knew how. There's something powerful about writing an apology to yourself. It doesn't fix everything, but it starts something. It begins a conversation that isn't about blame or shame, but about recognition. It says, I hear you. You mattered then. You still do now. I began keeping a journal just for these letters. Pages filled not with goals or dreams, but confessions to the self I used to neglect. Sometimes they start with, I'm sorry I didn't believe you. Sometimes it's, I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you when you needed someone on your side. And other times, they're softer. I'm sorry I only praised you when you were productive. You were worthy in your stillness, too. I've learned that healing isn't always about moving forward. Sometimes it's about walking backward into the rooms of your past where your younger self still sits, waiting for someone to say, hey, I know it was hard. You did the best you could. I'm so proud of you. And so now, on nights when I feel hollow, when the doubts creep in, when I start judging myself for not being further along, I write one more apology. Not because I'm broken, but because I'm learning to be kind. And kindness starts from within. Maybe tonight, as you lie there listening, your own apologies are stirring. Maybe there's something you haven't said, not to the world, not even to someone else, but to you. A whisper, a sigh, a quiet, I'm sorry for all the times you forgot you mattered. If that's the case, you don't have to write it. You don't even have to say it out loud. Just place your hand on your heart and think it. That's enough. Because tonight, you're being heard by the one who needed it most. Tier 5. The letter I finally wrote. It happened on a Sunday morning, the kind where the world feels slower than usual. The light was soft, golden, barely awake itself, and the air still with sleep, yet filled with something expectant. I sat by the window, my knees tucked beneath an old blanket, holding a warm cup of coffee that I hadn't even sipped. I hadn't planned to write anything. Not really. But something inside me had grown quiet. Not heavy. Not loud. Just ready. There were no tears when I picked up the pen. No dramatic sigh. No trembling hands. Only stillness. And in that stillness, I began to write. Dear me, I don't know why it's taken me this long. Maybe I thought you didn't need it. Maybe I believed you wouldn't want to hear from me. Maybe I just wasn't ready to be this honest. But here I am finally writing the letter you've deserved all along. Not because I have the answers, but because you deserve to be seen. I paused, let the ink dry for a second, watched the way the sun caught it, turning apology into shimmer. And then I kept writing. I'm sorry for making you wait. I know how long you've been holding on. For someone to notice. For someone to say, hey, I know this has been hard, but you've done beautifully. I see now. You were never weak for feeling too much. You were strong for never numbing out. You stayed soft in a world that asked you to harden. I'm sorry I spoke so cruelly to you in the mirror. Sorry I let the noise of others drown out your quiet wisdom. Sorry I didn't hug you when you needed one. I kept thinking someone else would. But I forgot I was someone too. My breath caught on that line. I reread it. I was someone too. Funny. How easy it is to forget that we are not just givers but receivers of care as well. I forgive you for the things you did when you didn't know better. I forgive the silence. I forgive the pretending. I forgive the smile you wore to keep the peace. I even forgive the nights you wanted to disappear not because you were selfish, but because you were tired of being invisible. You were never meant to carry so much alone. The page was nearly full now, but my heart wasn't finished. I wrote slower. Each word like a lullaby I'd forgotten I needed. I'm proud of you. For staying. For trying. For waking up even when you didn't want to. I love the way you notice the small things, the curl of steam from a mug. The way music wraps around you like a memory. I love how deeply you care. Even when no one's watching. I love that you're still here. Still learning. Still open to softness. I didn't sign the letter with my name. Instead, I wrote with all the gentleness I should have given you sooner. Yours finally. I folded the letter in half, pressed it against my chest, and in that quiet moment, I felt something shift, like an old door creaking open, or a sigh that had been held for years, finally exhaling. There's no ceremony for writing a letter to yourself, no applause, no witnesses. But that morning, it felt like a kind of rebirth. The kind that doesn't need to shout because it knows it's real. I didn't post it, didn't frame it, didn't even tuck it away in a drawer. I left it on the windowsill, beneath a beam of light, like a whispered offering to the version of me who had waited so long to be told, "You are enough. You always were." And now, you are finally heard. If you're still listening, eyes heavy, heart quiet, maybe there's a letter waiting inside you too. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be kind and true and yours. Sleep now, knowing there is someone you who will always write back.